Yeah. Why don't we kind of start with just your general thoughts on the way the season unfolded last year, start to finish, where your expectations were and where things finished?
It's hard to put a kind of a summation on a year like that. It was started off strong. We knew we had a big game to start. And then we kind of knew we had certain points along the way that we had to play really well. And when you really look at it, at the end of the year, we didn't finish as strong as we wanted to. And there's 2 games at the end where, one we didn't finish in the second half, and the other we lost by a point. And that's it's really hard to kind of wrap your head around sometimes. We worked really hard and came up short. So what are you going to do? Work harder. Some big wins in there, but don't really count at the end if you don't finish the way you want to. And so that's what's tough. Tough group. Our guys fought through the end, and like I said, we got to work harder.
Parker, you guys have to replace your kicker, obviously, this year. Kind of, do you view that as an open competition between all those guys?
We've got some talented guys. We've got some guys that have experience at other places. We have some guys that played here. And the truth is, our job as a coaching staff and as a team are to find the best players at every position, no matter what the circumstances are. So we have some guys that have a leg up on each other from some experience perspective, but the best guy will kick, and that's kind of what we're trying to find out this spring.
What did you see from Parker Lewis last year, even though he didn't play?
He's a powerful kicker. He's talented. He really is. He started 2 seasons at Southern Cal, and so that's one of the guys I mentioned that has experience in other places. And so, he's going to be right in the mix, and we got to figure out he was ineligible to start the season, so he was behind a little bit some of the other guys. And that's why this spring will be really big.
How much does Jaden's experience on kickoffs factor into now having a chance at that field goal spot?
It does. Playing in any game, in any role, is experience. Obviously, he didn't kick any field goals or extra points during the season, but because he was the travel guy and the kicker that was kicking off, he was our backup all last season. So he got extra reps during practice, and those will be very beneficial for him. But they won't really, they're different than what we're going to go through in the spring. That's kind of now we're going to see who's the one.
What's your communication been like with Noah over the past month? If you had to kind of make sure his spirits stay up with the way things ended?
Noah's a tough dude. I didn't have to make sure his spirits were up. They were. It was. I talked to him immediately after the kick. I talked to him in the locker room later. My wife and I saw him right after. It was one of those. You can't prepare for that. You can't. It's until you do it and you go through it. It's really tough. But then we talked, the days and the weeks, and I talked to him yesterday. It's one of those things. He's in a good place, but it was hard.
To make that decision in the moment, like how much confidence did you have that he could make that kick?
All the confidence in the world. The guy just made a 48-yarder. He's been a really good player for us. He's been unflappable. That's who he was. He like I said, he made a 48-yarder maybe 5 minutes before that, and didn't go in. It's one of those things where he'd love to have it back, but he doesn't get it, and there's no one else I'd rather have in that spot in that moment. I trusted him fully.
I know Ryan Day talks a lot about wanting young guys to earn their stripes on special teams.
Sure.
Figure out a way to make an impact. That's how you get on the field. Of that younger contingent this year, who stood out most to you?
Trying to think of who. Young is such a relative term now. With the youngest guy on our team, Sonny Styles, he played a lot, on special teams. But then you've got other young. That's once again, I don't know who's young and who's not. Chip was a first-year player for us. Chip played a lot for us on special teams. My favorite example is obviously an older guy now, but look at Mitch Rossi and Xavier Johnson. Who do you trust more than those guys? And X is scoring a touchdown against Notre Dame and then one against Georgia. That's where X made his life. And he still does. Even though now that he's playing on offense, he's still a big-time special teams guy. But young guys, Sonny Styles, CJ, as you saw, played. CJ Hicks, it is, not CJ Stroud, but played on special team. A bunch of guys did a really nice job. Caden Curry made a bunch of tackles. The list goes on and on for some of those true young guys.
How is CJ Hicks doing?
He's doing well. He's in a good place. He's got same deal as all these other guys, but he's going to have a tough spring, and that's the life we live here. So
you think back to 2019, obviously a really close loss to Clemson. I know the 2020 circumstances were pretty unique, right? But there was obviously an awful lot of build-up to wanting to play that season because of the frustrating last-minute loss the year before.
Sure.
Do you feel much of that going into next year, or is it too early to gauge that?
The team's just getting back together. There's definitely a hungry group. If you look at some of the guys that have chosen to come back, I'm really excited about that group of guys. Some of our older players, you're right though. The 19 to 20 team that year was so different, and it almost culminated in a weird way for us. With we lost in a championship game, but we beat Clemson after a whole year of hearing and working towards that, and then we didn't play our rival that year, so a lot of that energy kind of got put into that last, that Clemson game instead of the up north game. Time will tell kind of how that season impacts us and how that end of the season impacts, but we got a hungry team right now, and that's kind of what you want. So,
Parker, we don't get to talk to you that much, so there's just some interesting things that happen and have some specific questions about.
Sure.
We all know that what's been discussed with the call on the fake in the Michigan game that didn't get executed. Can you just take us through, what is the process of the decision making, on the sideline of okay, I think we're gonna do the fake here. How do you get it communicated? What's it like in that moment of trying to get something like that executed?
I think that's kind of the secret sauce in a lot of ways of the full game, especially with special teams, is there's people from every corner of the team that are involved. Head coach has to make those calls. They got to get obviously communicated through signals or through verbal. And when you have a situation like that one, where you're changing your call, you're getting into that look, and they had the perfect look, and you got to make sure it's the look you want, or else you'll maybe get out of it based on some fakes you'll just say run it, some fakes you'll say hey, we're gonna get out of it. That one was it's just one of those spots where we didn't get communicated to all the guys that needed it. It's a lot of pieces that you got to get done, and that one slipped through the cracks a little bit, and that's my job to not let that happen.
What are the lessons that can be learned from that? Is it because again, is that you say sometimes it can be a signal, sometimes it can be verbal.
Right.
I would imagine, especially an exciting game and a loud stadium, even when it's your own place, right?
Sure.
It can be. Is there anything about the process that you're thinking, maybe
there's some things we've learned. There's some things we'll do differently, as we continue. Obviously, we probably, they got a timeout off in the next game because it was, we were making sure we were all on the same page the next game. That's what happened to us a little bit.
Okay.
Against Georgia,
So you're adjusting. Okay. You tried to do it against Michigan, didn't exactly work. Now here you are against Georgia. You did tweak some things, but that gave the nanosecond.
I'm not going to say that did. There's a lot of things the factors that went into it, and there's probably, you talk to the guys down at Georgia, they got their own story too. But the truth is, that's the fog of war in a football game. There's so many little things that you gotta get all the guys. We had some backups in some spots. We had some different, and that's in-game adjustments, in-game backups, and that's how do you get those all prepared? You just keep practicing, and that's the thing. The communication is the key, and then the look's got to be the key from up top, from down low, from seeing it from the guys on the field. If they're getting you into it or getting you out of it, sometimes you have those where they have the ability to check you into certain looks. Hey, man, they're in a certain look. We're going to, change the play. Sometimes you don't. That's where I'm being vague on purpose because there's really no. I mean, any fake is it's so different. They're all, some are just we'll call it and haul it. Let it run. Some of them are, if you get this exact look, we're going to run it. Some of them are, hey, if you get one of a couple different looks or there's a specific, and that's kind of the way it works. And what you do is you watch on tape and say, hey, I believe we have a situation here where we can take advantage of. Okay. And then they might not give it to you, and they might. And in special teams, especially at this place, you can watch tape for a team for, an entire season or 2 seasons. You show up on Saturday and they run different stuff. That's just that's a life we live here, is that we get different, especially in special teams. Offense and defense too. They get different things from opponents all the time. And so that's how do you get it all put together? Sometimes it works. We've had a couple we need to work on.
If Georgia doesn't get the timeout there, does that fake work?
I think Mitch got the first down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Was there something about the look? Did you give too much away that they were able to sniff it out and call the timeout? Is there something that you learned from that of
it's a fine line between putting your guys in the right spot to execute, and that fake or that whatever you're calling versus disguising it. And that's kind of, there's the two options. You line up in something different and see if they call timeout or if they adjust, or you just run it out of your base alignment. And if you believe you have a better alignment for players to be successful, that's what we did on those two to try and get the right guys in the right spots. maybe we gave a little bit too much away. Obviously, they saw something. I think there was a little confusion on both sidelines, of us taking the field with a couple personnel, and there's some substitutions. They're looking at each other, and they called timeout now in the second half. Timeout in a close game, that's a big play too, and so that was part of the plan. Okay, they got it. They called timeout. Well, now they're down to 2, and that all factors into when you design those. Is what's the worst thing that happens? Well, you don't get it. So let's design something that we're going to get it if we call it. Okay, good. And then if they call timeout, okay, next play. We'll punt the ball. That's kind of the, a lot of.
But to have 2 that look extremely.
Yeah.
You understand the Michigan game and then that one, and then have them not happen.
That's right.
How frustrating is that? I mean, because you wait almost all year to get to run one. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I get it, and I understand. The world could be a different place if those had changed games. And the way I look at it is, you can be frustrated about it, or you can find a way to get better. And next time we get those opportunities, we go execute. That's the way I look at it, because there's too many situations where you could say, "What if this? What if that?" Can't live like that. I spent a lot of time the last few weeks or whatever, kind of going back and saying, from the last 2 games, what would you do differently? And there are obviously things but how do you learn from them? How do you get your guys in the right spot to execute? Because if
But the one against Georgia, do you go, man, we should have snapped it quicker? I mean, is that
a little bit?
Is that a thought?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we should. I think there's some.
It literally was a split second.
There's some ways you can disguise some stuff better, and then there's the fear of if your feet are moving a little bit and they get you for a false start and those type of. So make sure we're set, because we really want to get our cleats in the ground and go after them on that fake. That's kind of what that was. Mitch ran to the left because there was just no one over there because they weren't aligned properly. But the design was to just kind of go. Move them for a couple of yards. So you want to get your cleats in the dirt. But yeah, you'd love to have some little details, I guess, on that one after they called a timeout.
Parker, is there anything you said? Did you say anything to Noah after the game, or how did that all go down? Because people can say it doesn't come down to one play, but obviously, but it does come down to one play.
It does. It comes down to a lot of one plays. Yeah. That's there's a few messages. One is that I loved him, and there's no one I'd rather have in that spot. I mean, immediately after that kick, I saw the ball go up. I didn't even see it finish because I knew pretty quickly that ball wasn't going through. And so, I kind of grabbed a couple guys and hugged a couple guys, and I went and found Noah. That was kind of my mindset: is how do I make sure he knows that there's no one else we'd rather have in that spot. And then, Coach Day talked in the locker room. He told everybody in the room. He said, "Hey, man, this is not on one play or one guy." I know how he felt, and that's tough.
Yeah.
But no, we planned for it, we prepared for it. That's one of those spots where you kind of have a process for if they ice you, if you have this kick from that hash or this hash, and so there's we hit the right guy in the right spot, and I still believe that. So
there's none of us are special teams experts. I think sometimes it's harder. Special teams might be the most difficult area for fans, media to understand all the little details, the ins and outs. The process on the last field goal, was the process correct?
What do you mean by that?
Was there anything with Jesse getting the laces turned the right way?
No, there was some speculation. People saw it on the internet. No, the hold looked good. Yeah, it looked like because I think Jesse had a reaction. I think that was just him reacting to we just lost a game. I think it wasn't when you watch it, operation looked clean. It didn't go through. That was kind of
50 seams for a college kicker. That's not. Yeah, you make that every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at it in a bunch of different ways. There's some old stats I've read that there's from certain distances you should expect certain percentages, and obviously the further back you go, the less percentage you're going to make it. And I think that we've always wanted as a specialist unit put the game on our foot, put the game in our hands. How do we get that done? And at the end of the day, we don't want a guy here that says, yeah, give it to me from 35. You say, hey, put the ball down, I'll make the kick.
Yeah.
I don't care where you put it. If you have a guy, if that's your mindset, then it's already kind of you're not in a good spot. And Noah's a guy that yeah, good, that one, let's go. Where do you want the ball? Left hash, middle, right hash? Don't care. That's kind of his mindset.
Okay.
And that's what hurts me a lot about the fact that he didn't succeed in that moment too, is because he was so consistent and so good and so prepared that's hard. But yeah.
Whether you chart that in practice or anything, what 50-yarder for Noah Ruggles is what typically? 5 out of 10, 3 out of 10?
I'd have to go
8 out
back.
of 10?
I'd have to go back and look at the notes. You know, it's we kick 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Thursdays. You know, and then we watch everything in pregame and kind of decide, you know, where his range is based, because we know where his range is in here, and that's
Right.
kind of where we were playing in a dome, right? So we know where range is, and then we know where his range on that day is based on weather, wind, how he's feeling, a lot of those things, and you know, he made a 50-yarder in pregame, you know, and so he made 52, and so there's some of those things where, you know, he had the distance even in the game. I don't know what the metrics would say that his overall percentage should be from that. And I honestly, I don't know if you can get an accurate number in that moment.
How do you?
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, we try.
Right.
We try hard. I don't know if it's possible to truly get that moment and practice it and say, what's a percentage chance? You see on TV, you know, like a golfer, a putt make chance. Well, what's the situation?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
We're not
that's
robots.
Yeah, that's right.
It's human element.
And I guess the more data points you get, the better your numbers will be. But how many times you get that? He'd made a couple against the year before in big spots.
Yeah.
You know, against Penn State and Nebraska, things like that. And so you just kind of learn from it. And
What percent of your time in a week, time in a month, time in a year as a coach here is special teams? Is it 100?
No, it's not 100. Very high percentage, but no, it's not 100. I work with, I mean, there's recruiting. Obviously, that's a big factor. That's part of the reason I think we're all here today.
Yeah.
I know it's not signing day for the new world that we live in, but this is signing day. We just got done going through all of our, you know, recruiting boards and evaluating, you know, where we are in different positions there. And then I'm with the defense too. I sit in the defensive staff meetings. I'm not a defensive coach for any of the specific units, but I have an offensive background. I'm in there. There's a, you know, I'm a helping hands guy in that room as well.
Whose room? What rooms do you sit in? Do you change day to day?
I'm with the DBs. I'm DB's a big group, a lot of guys, two coaches, two great coaches. But that's kind of, I'm an extra pair of hands. And then when we go offense versus defense at different times, you know, I have an offensive background here and at other places, so I can help bridge those gaps in terms of, you know, communication and things like that.
And every staff does it differently. Why is having a person dedicated to special teams like you, as opposed to having this, you know, having 10 offensive, defensive guys who then all have, you know, one special teams unit? Why is this the right way to organize a staff in your mind?
I think that, like you said, there's a lot of ways to do it. You know, you need somebody that's their ultimate accountability focus, is saying, hey, even on our staff, even here, there's certain positions within our special teams that are delegated out, like certain positions on the punt team or the punt return team or the kickoff, they're delegated out, where I'm in charge of. It's the same thing with an offense or defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They don't coach every single individual position.
Right.
They have the big picture, they have the whole scheme, because somebody needs to. If you just give everybody, hey, you're in charge of punt, you're in charge of kickoff return, and then they'll all want the same guys a lot of times too. You know, right? Who's the best fit for the team in certain positions, in certain spaces? Well, I need him on kickoff, so he won't play on punt at this position, or I need him on punt, so he won't play on kickoff return. There's just like a lot of those little factors. How much are they, you know, involved in, you know, the whole picture versus just little pieces? Hands team, onside team, all the weird little situations that come up. That's where it's a lot more than just designing the schemes on Saturday. There's a lot of pieces that go into it, and that's where, you know, who's doing that. Every staff's a little different, and sometimes, you know, the head coach might be. That was our under Coach Meyer here. He was a big piece of that, and that was kind of his attachment to all the different pieces there.
Yeah.
And when Coach Day's been so involved with the offense, and that's why I've been, you know, doing my job. That's kind of the way it works.
When you are the special teams coach, do you want to run 2 fakes a game because you're like, oh, I got this great perfect stuff, we got it? Or do you want to run like 2 fakes a year because you want to wait for the perfect moment? I don't know, sometimes, like, if it's like, are you riverboat gamblers who want to take risks all the time?
I think we all want to say that, and then if it doesn't work, you look at yourself like, that was not smart. But you know, it's funny, the fake that we didn't run against Team Up North ended up in a touchback. That's like the best worst fake ever, and you're like, come on, you know, like, so you try and find like safe, different, like, what's the worst? There's some crazy stuff you can do, and there's some stuff that you can say, you know what, there's short games, there's long games, right? What's the long game? Well, if a fake is designed to beat an opponent's exact scheme, that's good, it helps you win that game. if sometimes there's fakes or there's different tweaks or different things that people might not even really recognize to the layman, like then the other special teams coaches across that watch our tape or that we're going to play next, they say, oh, look at that, or I see that, and I'm saying, oh, look. You have to defend against different things now, and you have to. It helps your scheme protect itself, or it helps your the next week. You know, what else are they going to be practicing? Are they going to spend less time on just our base? Are they going to spend more time making sure they have proper edges? You know, after Jesse ran that one against, Rutgers, next week there's a guy standing out there, a big dude on the edge standing out there like, well, you're not going to run this. Okay, so that's one less person involved in the rush scheme.
Yep.
And those are, there's just, and you get to know the other coordinators that you go against, and you kind of learn their personality, and you learn what they have in their bag and how they're going to operate, and you game plan specifically against, what you know from other people too, or what you've seen on tape. So there's
At what point, how much scouting went into the Michigan game, seeing how they do it? Okay, I see something here. This type of fake for us might work in this situation.
A lot.
Can you take us through a morsel of that process that leads you to, because I'm sure, how much film do you watch on Michigan special teams to get ready for that game? It must be.
I've seen a lot. I've watched a lot. Yeah, I mean, you go back to ever since that crew's been there. Coach Harbaugh and Jay and the guy. We watch all of it. I've got a book right now it's actually sitting on my stairs of my house that I walked past coming downstairs this morning because I didn't take it upstairs, where it's the 17 through 21 and now 22. What all the pictures, all the things they've done, and how they attack us, and what they've
Just Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And so we keep track of that stuff, and they've attacked us in a specific certain way a couple times, and so you just kind of have plans for what they do. Now that they're not the only people that have attacked us that way, and so it could have been you can use it in other situations too. But that's kind of and then it's a they're good. So there's a lot of details that go in that people probably don't recognize.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, special teams, right? But kicking it, punting it, returning it, covering it, just everything that you're involved in. How do you think it went this year?
You'd say overall the same way I just described the season. We had some good moments. If you don't finish, it doesn't really, you have opportunities to change games, and you don't. You need to change those games. That's our job. It's my job. If you look at specifically, kickers, punters, they played well. Jaden grew up as a freshman, kicked off well. Our kickoff team played well in big games. There's a fine line between those young players that you need to be great players for you down the line that might not be ready to go win big-time games for you. And you got to piece and put the right guys in the right spots to develop them the right way and also go dominate and win games. And so I think we had some growth there, which is a big part of what the special teams around here have become. It's not just any individual play. There's a big picture here. And so there's some moments where you'd say, hey, I wish you had done that better, and gotten the guy on the ground a little bit earlier, defeated that block a little bit differently, or played this technique just slightly better. But in the learning curve, in the process, we knew what we were doing there, and that's something that I think we can always improve on. But if the guys get better from week to week to week, and you go play well in the big games, that's what you need. In terms of the kickoff and then the punt team, we had a lot of moving parts in there, which is abnormal for this place. Just different injuries, different moving, and I think the guys did a great job of adapting and going playing hard. Kickoff return, when your defense is playing well, you don't get many chances, and that's something that we saw late down. We tried some different guys back there. Same deal. If we can develop and get a guy ready, that's kind of the plan. X did a great job down the stretch. It's kind of the nature of it. And then punt return, Jack's getting hurt early, changed a little bit of our kind of focus there.
Yeah.
Because he was, a great returner. And so that you just kind of have to keep adapting. But, jobs get the ball back. Saw that against Iowa, saw that against a couple of those. How many fakes did we deter? You'll never know. By kind of our scheme and our structure and how we were organized, you'll never know. But that's part of kind of how I look at it all and say, success. At the end of the season, it's a team game, and we didn't help the team win the games we needed to at the end. But, some good, some bad.
How many kickers do you have on scholarship right now?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of different.
It's hard to.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of all that stuff.
Thank you, Parker.